Well, hello there, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 112 of FinalBossTV. Today, your WoW and Game Rating Show. My name's Adam KK. I'll be your host today for Let's Talk Legion number 5. The 5 one, or the V, not a peace sign, but a Roman numeral V, because I'm being classy on the internet. What that is. But today, we're bringing up 2 different types of tanks for this episode of Let's Talk Legion. And I was told we're bringing up the soft and squishy meaty tanks, and then the not so soft and squishy pointy tanks. But with plausible deniability on the show for her first time, because everything she says could just be wrong. We don't know. We might as well bring it up. There's Sunnier talking about Vengeance Demon Hunters today. Hello.
Yes, my first time on the show. I'm talking about a tank that's newer instead of Brewmasters, but very excited about the very sharp tanks.
Well, I mean, we would talk about Brewmasters today, but we still can't test them, so...
They don't exist.
They don't exist.
We do what we can.
That's very true. But I appreciate you being on the show today. You've done some research and tanked some things on the very pointy tank, yes?
Yes, a lot of things. I've died a lot, and I've survived a lot, and I have understanding, at least.
Well, that's good. That's all we want to do today. We're just trying to go over a brief overview of what is changing, because the tanking community gets a new tank. So... very good. And there's this guy again. Hi, Ari. How you doing, buddy? Hi.
What's up? How's it going, man?
Hi.
I mean, I'm here.
You're here?
You wanted me back, so I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I do things, talk things, stuff.
About
Yeah.
bears?
Yeah! So, bears are exciting, and we're going to talk a lot about them, and I pretty much finally got everything I ever wanted, so super, super happy.
Super happy.
It's never happened before, but...
It's actually true. It's never happened before.
You've talked about bears before, and they've been fine. A lot of stuff's happening.
Yeah. I mean, fine, sure, but still a lot of things left wanting. But now I've got almost everything that I could have possibly wanted from an expansion, so...
Well, you've got...
It's
yeah,
great.
I mean... So Sunnier's going to talk about the brand new tank coming into the game, but then bears, druids have been changed quite a bit, so you're in the sort of the same boat.
Yeah. Our entire class pretty much got like a gigantic overhaul because basically avoidance AM just doesn't work, which we've learned over the past couple of expansions.
Right.
So we got a whole new AM tool set, and it works out a lot better, and is just as fun, if not more fun. So it's great.
Being told by chat apparently that my microphone did reset, so I'm just checking right now real quick to make sure. And, nope, it's fine. So I don't know what's going on. I even showed it on stream because chat is joining us for this experience here. But, yeah, well, back to what you said about bear stuff is that the whole big toting fantasy going on with Legion right now, right, is they're trying to bring everything new and crazy and fantastic. So bears take hits now and don't dodge anything. That's why you don't dance? Is that why you don't dance?
Well, I mean, I don't dance because I'm horrible at dancing, but we lost dodge as our primary active mitigation mechanic. And over the last couple of expansions, we've experienced a whole lot of problems with dodge being that, especially early mists and even early... This expansion, what's expansion? Warlords? Trying to put it out of my mind. Where you like just get wombo comboed and die, and we keep having to be over buffed as the expansion goes on in order to compensate for that.
Right.
This time around, we had a mastery that kind of supported us when dodge failed, but then we ran into things like Korag, where dudes meleeed you for magic damage, and it didn't matter. So it's all gone now, and it's fine, basically. Like, it's good that it's gone, because having dodge as active mitigation was basically just a holdover from the fact that agility gave us dodge for so long. Which was just a mechanical thing that they didn't get rid of until Warlords. So actually didn't even get rid of it in Warlords.
It was a weird tank for a while, and either it was like really awful or amazing.
Yep. I mean, well, BRF was kind of like average, but Highmaul was bad, and HFC was great. So that's kind of what happens over
Right.
the course of the expansion. What happened to Mists. That's what happened in Warlords. Hopefully, we'll just start off kind of, even playing field, and then stay that way in Legion.
I'm really hoping the secondary stat changes, kind of like, because a lot of that is the progression of how secondary stats scale for each tank class, and like brewmasters get really overpowered later in tiers because of that reason. So maybe they won't start like super crappy tank at first, super overpowered tank later.
Well,
Yeah.
with the recent post about blue stats, I guess they're green, but the secondary stats now won't be like, you'll kind of get to a certain level in like heroic dungeon gear, but then you're not gonna like exponentially scale because they're gonna make him like, so you can get to about a 30% or whatever your main set that you want, but then in a tier of gear you won't be at like 70%, right? They're trying to change that, so I hope that it feels that tanks get to a point where they have the stat they need. That's the goal anyway. Where you have the haste you need or the master you need for whatever class you are early on, so you feel comfortable. But then, yeah, like you just said, like a tier later, you're not like, nothing does any damage to me.
Ridiculous.
And my guard. Yeah. Well, you know about
Yeah,
guard.
like the idea is to, instead of multiplying your stats tier over tier over tier, is just to make it additive instead,
Right.
Or to flatten it out so much that that the secondary stat growth becomes additive as opposed to multiplicative.
Mhm.
And because secondary stats typically multiply on top of each other for whatever you're trying to do, that will reduce the power creep over the course of the expansion. That's the goal anyway.
Right.
It's an admirable goal. I support that goal. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And then, Sunnier, what have you seen so far in, like, just an early opening talk about how Vengeance feels as the new tank on the block, right? Because it is sort of like a much more mobile Death Knight.
Yeah. Yeah, they feel a lot like Death Knights, and that like you can solo all sorts of things because of all the self-healing that's coming in. Not a whole lot of upfront damage mitigation, similar to DKs, but you're also like bouncing around everywhere. It's definitely a very cool spec because you constantly turn into your demon form and just smash stuff. And it's like, it doesn't matter how effective that stuff is. You want to push it more because it feels so great to push all of those buttons.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, the only passive, I mean, it has like a huge, I have this in the notes a little later on, but I'll bring it up here because it does intrigue me that they have a huge passive to help them actually get to a tanking, because they don't have a tanking stance, right? So they have,
Right.
What's it called? It's the demonic
Whatever
marks or whatever? Or what is
Yeah, it's something to do with tattoos and how they reduce your
Demonic
magic
wards.
damage taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a 30% passive magic damage mitigation, and then 20% stamina, and then 200% armor.
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, it's basically everyone else's passive
Right.
make me a tank skill. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the magic damage is kind of interesting because besides that, demon hunters have no way to reduce magic damage. It's all passive, and then they heal it all up.
Yeah.
So it's very like you don't have a lot of control, and it doesn't matter what type of damage is coming in. Like even demon spikes just reduces physical damage taken. So you have to heal up a lot, and luckily there's a lot of tools for that.
All right, well, before we go any more of that, we got to ask the real questions of the show that everyone wants to know. So, all right. Ari, are you Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I mean, how can you not go with Tony Stark? Like, I don't.
Yeah, you know.
And Tony Stark has Spider-Man, so yeah.
Well,
He's
does
a charmer.
That's what the trailer says.
Oh god, the trailer! Don't get you started on the trailer. It spoiled so much.
I know.
I hate movie trailers. I hate them.
But it's gonna be a fun movie to watch, I think. In any case.
Yeah, Sunnier, what about you?
Team Cap. I mean, how could you like
What?
even if you don't understand the conflict, which I don't, and I am really involved in Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, and I'm still kind of like, what are they fighting about it? But Captain America is like, you can trust that dude. He will always have your best situation at heart, and he's like Tony Stark has ulterior motives, you know. He needs to sell weapons to bad dudes. He says he doesn't do that now, but then he created Ultron. So I don't trust that guy at all. I trust good old Captain America.
We got the Team Lokis coming up in chat. That's funny. I like it.
Yeah, I'd go with Team Loki.
Well, Ragnarok soon, right? That's where Thor is. He's not in this damn movie. And this is a weird question. I was gonna ask like a food-oriented question, and this one took me a while to figure out what I wanted to ask you all. So, if you had to choose to eat one of these combinations, which would it be? Would you fruit your pizza? Would you fruit your salad? Normally salads are savory, so putting fruit on salads to me is like, ugh. Or would you fruit your beer? Are you first?
Fruit the beer, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, how is this? Yeah, duh.
There's some good fruity sours out there. That's some of my favorite types of beer. That seems like an easy thing.
So you'd both fruit the beer then? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could fruit all of the things. I love fruit.
You put fruit on your pizza? That's so weird to me. Oh.
And like pineapple, pears, they work with the right cheese.
I don't know about
Someone
this.
has clearly never eaten artisanal pizza.
Apparently not, no. Nope. Gotta keep that savory, though. It's weird. Like, people put, like strawberries and, like, almonds and apples in their, like, chicken salad, and I'm like, what are you doing? Oh.
It's called a chef salad.
You get... Don't give into this, all right? This peer pressure that the government is giving you that you put fruit in your salad. Don't do that, okay? Just meat and rabbit food. That's all you can put in there.
Fruit is a great excuse because it's like it's really just a ball of sugar with some like vitamins in it.
Oh no!
But people see it as a healthy thing, so you just put it on everything.
Oh god!
And it's like an
true.
excuse. It's like this peach is healthy. Sure, it has lots of sugar in it, but fiber.
Fiber. Okay.
But I mean, it theoretically has other things in it too. I mean,
yeah.
Vitamin C. I don't know what else.
We're talking about
just means you can eat it. It's better than a Coke.
I like the hashtag fruit the Loki. There we go. That's perfect. I'll take that one. All right. So let's play some Spec Ping Pong. All right, let's dive right back over here to the Vengeance DK. See what I did there? And I'll talk about the new kid on the parry, because they're not on the block, because they don't block anything. I'm not good at puns. But at the core of it, both Havoc and Vengeance seem very simple, and Blizzard's new way of balancing and changing stuff up with talents and even the artifact is to sort of add layers to the cake, some of them being optional. So, I brought up how it's like a very mobile Death Knight, basically. I'm sorry, Death Knights, you're not very mobile because you're a giant two-handing armored, you're like a boss mob in, Dark Souls, right? So, the new Blizzard talent go with new cake layers, and it's a very parry, self-healing oriented tank. How's this working out so far in Legion so far, Sunnier? What do you think?
Well, the simplicity is really nice. The thing about Demon Hunters that every other tank won't have is that everyone going into it is brand new. So having kind of a ultra simple layer on top, to start with, is everyone's going to have to start it simple because no one knows what they're doing. Which I think is a pretty good place for Blizzard to put them. Brewmasters are the opposite, where they're super complicated at the start, and no one played them because Stagger is kind of weird. So having something simple is great as long as there's something to build on that. And talk too much about Brewmasters. Vengeance has a bunch of talents and artifact traits that really ramp up the complication if you want that. Mm-hmm. We have yet to see how long-lived that complication will be, because that's going to be in a year or so when people do know what they're doing.
Right.
But I have high hopes for... There's two talents in particular. It's Fellblade and Fracture, which are both rotational abilities that you can spec into if you want to, and they bring a whole lot to the table as far as complication to your rotation.
Right. You were talking about Fracture here. I'll bring it up on the screen. So you... it says it costs 400 pain, which is incorrect. It costs 40, right?
Yeah. For some reason, there's a bug with how databases read the resource requirements. It costs the same amount of pain as Soul Cleave does. Mm-hmm. So it's Fracture spawns a soul for you to use for healing later when you use Soul Cleave. And so it's your ultimate like, I don't need healing right now, but I think I'll need it later, so I'm going to invest in Soul Cleave by using Fracture.
Right. And the other one, which both you and or both Vengeance Demon Hunters and Heavy Demon Hunters get, is Fellblade, which is a 15-second rotational ability that really feels good because it has a chance to reset to give you another button to like press in there. But all it does is damage, but it generates pain for you too, though. So that's a pretty good thing.
Like, Fellblade has so much baked into it that it almost feels too good. Like, it's a gap closer. It charges you to your target. It generates pain, so you put it really high into your priority system. It has a chance to reset for sheer, so there's that kind of random element to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fire damage, which when you max out your artifact, fire damage heals you. So it's got a lot of things going for it. It's almost like too awesome.
Too good,
because, except that right now in the beta, it currently has no animation, and it doesn't work on all boss mobs.
That's fine, though. It's fine. It's working.
Assuming those get fixed, it's awesome.
Right. Yeah, there is. I was talking to Word Up about this because he's been doing a lot of stuff with Havoc, and he said like it almost feels mandatory for the rotation to not be like button, 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 different button, 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 different button, button. That's all you do is like A, B, A, B. So it helps change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and it's got some decent competition, but the fact that it is just on top of providing so many things like a little bit of healing and a gap closer and damage and pain, it just makes your life more interesting. And there's value in stuff that simplifies your life. Like if you're learning a complicated boss and you just don't want to have to deal with thinking too much about your rotation right now. Like there's a niche for that, but at some point you're just going to be using Fellblade all the time, and then because it's a pretty clear winner. It doesn't matter what the competition is; it's the most interesting one. So I kind of hope they look into that in the future, and it gets maybe its sibling talent gets some love or something like that.
It's an interesting thing to bring up too, because when you bring up that it's the more interesting one, and that's sort of the whole new talent design thing that I've been seeing. I do first passes, third pass, second pass are going to be happening soon eventually. But if you hit channel guide, the exclamation point guide in my chat, you can see all the classes I've tested, and in all the testing I have done with more to come, you see sort of this layering in the talents where you have like a passive, like a semi-passive, possibly like a proc, or an actual just active ability. And almost every specs in the whole game right now are getting this, and you can like add another ability that's a little more complex. You can add maybe a proc that adds randomization, or you can add just a passive flat, and that's how the game is sort of shifting. But in a lot of ways, not to be disheartening to people that are not like in the hardcore, but normally you play the more difficult style, right? To gain the most benefit of it because you control your class to your utmost degree. And I wonder why that it's weird because they pull so much out of the specs and they give you like different abilities as talents now, or even some glyphs or talents now. So it's gonna be weird how we see that.
It's a really complicated system because it's there's a lot of pressure to choose the talent that sims the best all the time. But for like, if you're just starting out, it's usually beneficial to take like the really simple passive one because it's like, you're not always going to remember stuff or time stuff right. So there's kind of like a weird social pressure that discourages the experimentation that would otherwise be beneficial. So like, I'm pretty open to like saying like, I just want to not die and focus on like my two buttons, my shear and my soul cleave for right now, because this is a new boss and I want to focus on doing the right stuff for that boss. And that'll probably get me further on that boss. If I don't have to think about the other two cooldowns and monitor those, that's going to be better in the long run. But like, if I'm going hardcore and I've been doing this forever on challenge modes or whatever, I'm going to want that hardcore button, and it doesn't even really compare to the silly little passives that I would have used at the start. And I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. Like, if it feels good to when you've mastered something, just always be using the same talents. Hopefully there's some variation in niches that different talents apply to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that sort of parallels over to Guardian, because we had the longest discussion with the ability Pulverize, and that giving you something else to do. Because you kind of like, you mauled with excess rage, you hit Mangle, and you spam Lacerate. And then at certain points, like, Maul became like not even worth it. It does damage, I guess, but, right? So should some of these abilities even just be baseline? Like, should Fellblade or like Pulverize be in the base kit, and then they should build from there? Because sometimes when a talent gives you another button that is so integral to make you feel like you're actually having a good rotation, is that too much power in that talent?
I think there's like a balancing line. Like Fracture feels pretty good because it's really powerful when you know how to use it. But it's like it only has that one niche of like improving future soul cleaves. So the other talents can kind of compete with that. Whereas with Fellblade, like it adds so much. It has everything you would ever want in a rotational ability. That it makes it really hard to choose anything else. So it's like if they can specialize a bit more, not have a single talent apply to so many things, I think that makes it a more interesting decision.
All right, what do you think?
I mean, I agree, basically. Like, having talents that do different things in different situations is ideally the way you want to go. The level 15, I guess, Guardian talents right now on live, I was like, got the level 100s. Or not live. And Legion, I got the level 100s from live stuck in my head for some reason. Are all good in different situations. Admittedly, Brambles is like way undertuned. But
Oh, no!
assuming that it actually like was effective in content that wasn't like normal 5-mans, you would ideally use that in like a huge AoE or maybe a 5-man situation, and then you have Blood Frenzy, which is ridiculously good on Cleave, is almost like just barely not as good as Pulverize for single target, but definitely gets better than Pulverize once you start adding more than one target. And Pulverize is by far the single best single target ability or single target talent of that level. So you would pick based on what you're going to be doing in a given encounter. And that is, in an ideal world, kind of how the talents would go. And like Blood Frenzy and Pulverize are close enough together that you could get away with just playing Blood Frenzy on single target if you really wanted to.
Yeah, it's weird because some people don't want to play with like the passives at all, and I guess you don't have to be choosy in certain ways, but that's how Legion is pushing us. Sometimes the passive might be incredibly boring but be very powerful, but then like the active give you something else to pay attention to and do. And that's going to be weird to balance out over the course of the expansion, because that's like every single spec gets that treatment. And this is the largest, I mean, as far as I remember, this is the largest spec overhaul, talent creation, new build that we've ever had in this game, like since the MOP talents existed. But that was a lot of just like removing passive modifiers to damage, which we got on the artifact weapons now too. So
yep.
It's a lot. Yep, that's about all you could say. Yeah. And I guess the last little thing about the Vengeance like overview here, Sunnier, did you find any like pitfalls or things that, because you joked about, you know, I've died a lot, but like what were you finding to be a problem with Vengeance?
They kind of suffer similar to Death Knights. Like they don't have a whole lot of upfront damage mitigation. They have some really strong cooldowns, and they have Demon Spikes, which reduces damage by 20% and increases parry. But there's nothing super beefy about them. And they don't have active magic mitigation. They have great passive magic mitigation. They have 30% just altogether magic reduction through their mystical tattoos. But they don't like have much control over that. And of course they can heal a good deal, and a good deal of that is kind of passive healing or random healing. And so it's kind of similar to the Death Knight weaknesses, but they can move around a whole lot, and they have probably less direct control over their healing unless they spec into stuff. But they're still like being iterated on. So some things we're not really sure if it's just not introduced yet, like or maybe it's like an intended weakness or whatever.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to jump too far ahead into like the overall tank discussion, so we'll flip over here to Guardian Druid stuff real quick. Monsieur Arielle, what do you think to the drastic changes for the Guardian Druid? And then I'll ask the big tank questions, because I want to get both of these out of the way first. So, as I said before, the fantasy change is to remove that all bears went to the Piccolo school of dodge. So that's gone.
It's good that it's gone, actually. I talked about at the start of the show how dodge has historically been a problematic way to do active mitigation, because you end up getting wombo comboed early in the tier, and then later in the tier you have to get overbuffed to compensate for that. That's all gone now, so now we just have an armor, 2 abilities. One that gives extra armor. It's a multiplier on top of bear form, so you have your bear form armor, and then Iron Fur is an additional multiplier on top of that number. Works really well for physical damage reduction. That doesn't go through armor like bleeds and stuff, but that's fine because takes are supposed to have some kind of weakness. And for magic, we actually have a magic active mitigation button now, which didn't exist before. So Mark Reversal fills that need, which is great, because typically in the past we've had to either just eat magic damage, or use a cooldown for it. But now there's a button. We can use resources and like spend them on a magic or damage reduction, which is pretty sweet. So that's very exciting. And Frenzy Regen has been flipped back to a heal over time effect, which is more druidy. A lot of people prefer the instant heal just from an effectiveness point of view, and it's totally true that an instant heal is more in the hierarchy of healing. It absorbs instant heals hots. Instant heals are obviously more valuable than hots, but there's nothing wrong with a hot per se, as long as it actually does its job. And at the start of alpha, it was like grossly overpowered, and now it's really hard to tell where it is now, because so much stuff ends up actually buffing Frenzy Regeneration, from artifact traits to talents, to just your gear, like Mastery buffs your Frenzy Regeneration. So it's really hard to tell where it is currently, especially with the lack of like stable raid testing that's going on. So we'll know for a little bit, or we'll know in a little bit, I imagine, where that's going to shake out. But the core kit of those 3 abilities is great. And the rotation is back to something more akin to Cataclysm, where you want to press Mangle all the time, but Mangle resets on ability use as opposed to a dot tick, which is what it was in Cataclysm, and that's fantastic. And in Warlords, it was just on Lacerate use. Now it's on any ability, any non-Mangle ability, but the proc chance is lower, so you no longer feel bad about dropping in a Thrash or dropping in a Moonfire, because you previously you'd be like substituting those in the last GCD of a cycle of 4 to make sure you didn't lose a Mangle proc. Now you just don't care. You can use them whenever you really want to, without losing any Mangle procs. And in addition to that, that 3rd GCD is no longer meaningless, because whenever you get a proc, you also get extra rage. So that's pretty awesome. So you have 2 dots to manage, a filler, and Mangle on cooldown, which is pretty sweet. It's a pretty nice basic rotation.
That's actually a really good way you put all of that, in a way that it works to how you describe tanking, which it makes sense when I'm listening to it, because as a tank, there's always been this weird argumentative point that, like, should tanks do tons of damage? Should tanks not do tons of damage? Should tanks be more focused upon, like, having some abilities to obviously propagate damage for threat, but then mostly care about, defensives and active mitigation and smoothing their incoming damage, right? The goal of a tank is to, A, take hits and position bosses, but B, you're supposed to smooth incoming damage. And back when, like, Vengeance was a huge thing in MoP, it was always, like, trying to scumbag to do DPS because you never took damage because there was so much triage healing. And then in Warlords now, it's like, okay, well, Resolve is there, but okay, and there's nothing to really care about. But the way you make it sound like it's that your DPS abilities are there, but because you have active things to pay attention to, that's more important. And I wonder if that's the shift they want tanks to feel, because again, going back to Vengeance Demon Hunter, really only a 2-button class, arguably, right, for DPS purposes. And
Yeah,
is that
without talents.
Yeah. So, but that's okay, I think, at least from my perspective, because you should be caring about not getting killed, right? Because you're taking all the damage to the face. But,
And I think, like, a big part of it is making sure, when you're first starting tanking, that you don't care about DPS, which I think is the right way to go. When you first start, you should be focusing on tanking and just tanking, and that should be like the easiest thing for you to do. And then DPS should be kind of layered on if you feel like you need that, and there's some talents to add into that, or traits that you can boost up with relics, or something to like opt into that more DPS oriented role.
Yeah, I guess as you get more comfortable with it, it becomes something you can actually pay attention to. But I guess I know people want to do damage, but if you want to do damage, then you should be playing a DPS class. I never understood why this weird thing with tanks being so competitive about wanting to do so much DPS. Which, it should matter to a point, but...
And you're speaking to the choir here. Like, I could happily tank and do zero damage and just, like, reduce all of the damage on me. But, like, other people want DPS. And there's a lot of interesting choices to be made with, like, trading off some survival for DPS when you need it, and especially when talents come in. Like, if there's a fight that doesn't really hit you that hard but has a DPS challenge that you need to overcome, like that becomes interesting. So it's a really wide range of needs that you need to fill in the whole DPSing tank thing. And you can go too far, like Miss was, where Vengeance was just the only reason tanks were there, really. Like, it just made them godlike DPS, and then it's like, well, they also tank things on the side. That's nice.
That's what.
But they're also carrying our DPS crew.
Yeah, that's what Eladia brought up in chat, is because Vengeance was overpowered and tanks got used to it, which is sad, but that was also like 3 years ago. Okay, come on, like, it's a different game back then. So, and now they have nothing to really pay attention to now, because Vengeance is gone, and Resolve is gone, and all you have is just like the balance you're given, right?
Well, I mean, right now on live, your passive survival is so absurdly high. Like, especially with two times upgrades and just all the passive survival from both you and your healers going around. Like, you almost don't even care about when you press AM buttons anymore. And it's kind of sad, actually. I make this joke like every week when we do farm that the hardest hitting guy in Hellfire Citadel is the stupid Wrathguard of Zakuun Trash. Like, it's literally the hardest hitting thing in the entire instance. And that's kind of depressing. And Sunny and I have talked before about how, like, heroic Zakuun felt more dangerous than mythic Zakuun. Like, it was really weird.
Gear. It's unfortunate. And I'm really, like, I'm clinging onto that secondary stat scaling thing. Like, please fix this.
Yeah. And hopefully we get into a world where everything feels like Heimwall did, where when and how you used your buttons actually mattered.
Right. All right. It seems like they're trying to go that route now, because they're changing the healing paradigm again, the 4th expansion in a row, even though talking to 4 healers so far on the show about how it's going to work out, you're building a show or 2 guests on the show, it does look potentially great that they're going to have to care about their mana, which means if healers care about their mana and that they can't just, like, spam heal everybody, then tanks should have to hopefully care about, their buttons they're pressing, because they have to make sure they're smoothing their damage intake. And if they're not doing
and not just like all the buttons they're pressing, but they have to care about, like, long-term damage reduction, which is a thing that, like, we theoretically care about, but in practice has just never really concerned us for the
Yeah.
last 2 or 3 expansions.
Yeah.
Because it's like they'll recover the mana. It doesn't matter if they're spamming Flash Heal because it's like it in practice it doesn't actually happen that much. Like tanks can either take care of themselves or it's like a tank that is good at reducing damage long term still isn't all that valuable for other various reasons. But
Yeah, we'll have to definitely see how that works
Yeah,
out.
and like to be fair, this whole healing change goal is something that they try to do every single expansion, and always works for the first tier, and then completely fails after that. So
Yeah.
hopefully it sticks this time, and maybe the secondary stat scaling part will also contribute to it actually being successful.
Yeah. Well, the two things there. The secondary scaling stat part, as it's not going to scale out of control.
Awkward silence is awkward.
Awkward silence.
Bay,
What?
where'd you go?
What awkward silence? Pardon me?
oh my god, we can't carry this show without him. Where did he go?
What? I'm talking to you right
now,
now.
Well, anyway.
Now it's really tank cast. So
What?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna make a joke about how it was actually like Tankcast episode 37, and now it actually is Tankcast episode 37 because we can't hear a moderator.
What?
So
You can't hear
anyway,
me. I'm right here.
Let's just dive into the show notes, and we'll see about where we're going here.
What are you... Really?
So, did we... No, Bay, we can't hear you.
What the heck? Can the stream hear me?
Did we actually
the
really
troll is real?
need another tank? We've actually talked about this before. We had a really good discussion about this, about whether or not another tank was needed. So, I mean...
like do we ever need anything? Is that, like, we never need another melee DPS. We never even need a new range DPS or healer. It's just like, it's what the developers think, wow, this would be a fun thing to do, and they do it. And I think tanks, like, especially are really fun for developers to do because they care about healing and DPS and reducing their damage. So they can have a lot of easier, like, subjective choices in talents. They can have the raid healing talent and the personal damage reduction talent and a DPS talent on the same tier, and it's like actually an interesting decision between the three.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening is that hybrid classes are just more fun to design than like a single role class, right? And I can't mute you, so I don't. Bay, I can't unmute you because I haven't muted you, so I don't know what's going on.
You jacked my show.
Anyway.
You apparently jacked my show. What's happening?
Where was I going? Hybrids, more fun to design than single war classes. And what ends up happening is tanks end up always being the base hybrid. It's like freaking out. The base of the hybrid, and which means you either add melee or healer on top of that. With monks, we added both, right? We had melee and healer. And because they wanted to do demon hunters, and because demon hunters are historically just a melee spec, the only real addition that made sense is adding tanking on top of that.
Can you imagine like a demon hunter healer? Like what would they even do? Use souls? Like vengeance demon hunters generate souls on the ground, big purple ox orbs basically. They just like throw them at people. I don't know.
I'm sorry, Bay. We're trying to keep going without you.
I'm talking, but apparently you can't hear me. I don't understand.
Figures out what's going on.
I can't figure anything out.
But yeah,
what's happening?
So you end up with this class, and you know you're going to make it a melee spec. So then your only real other option is make it a tank. So it's kind of the natural direction to end up going. Is it necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so.
Like they've been pretty good about, at least the last 2 expansions, Blizzard has been pretty good about like balancing tanks for average people. Like there's always the top 5% or whatever that will have the handful of best tank classes, but for normal people, like you can clear Mythic with any tank, and they all have relatively the same skills. So it's not so much like a balance thing. It's just like what's the flavor of each of these guys, and do they have enough of their strengths and weaknesses to get through.
Yep.
Hmm.
I'm waiting. I'm hoping Bay is going to give me a cue as to what the hell's going on.
Well,
Okay, we're going to remake the Skype call.
We're going to remake the
Bay's
Skype
probably
call
told to stream this
live
but,
on the show.
Just reiterating, we're going to remake the Skype call.
They can
Take
hear
a quick
me.
break.
This
Be
is
back in a
so
couple minutes.
weird. Yeah, this is so. They can hear
Hopefully
me
it
just
works.
fine. I'm just going to close the call and then open it back up again because you guys can hear me the whole time. And I'm like, April Fools arrived early. Yeah, I don't know what happened because you guys can hear me and them, but not the Skype call. So we'll see if this just. I'm just gonna reboot the call. That's all I'm doing. Everything is gonna be the same exact thing. It's not gonna be a different place. So yeah. Once they get the call, then I will just flip back over.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, you can hear me now.
Yeah, I
What's-
could see you talking on Twitch stream.
Yeah, no,
It's
they
like-
can hear me the whole time. April Fool trolled by Skype. Yeah, I guess so.
I couldn't hear anything, so
That was so weird. I can't wait. Side plug as we fix this out during the live show that can't wait for Discord to have voice and video. Where's Ari? Call is out. Hello? Friend. But yeah, because I wanted to ask you about the armor cap and stuff in the game, and then that's when you said you couldn't hear me. But I don't know where...
Skype just only supports 2 people now.
Oh, apparently. Yeah, Skype only supports 2 people now, apparently. Yeah. But this is fun. Live
I know
technical
nothing
stuff.
about the armor cap. Well, I used to when I played a bear, but now it's just not even it's a pipe dream, that armor cap.
85% now? Well, we'll get back to that in just a moment. Let me see. I'm going to restart again. Because I don't know why I'm only getting one of my guests to join the call. Hello, sir? I mean, I've had technical difficulties before, but this is always fun. Where is he? Is he even responded? So, the armor cap question, though, comes into play that only certain classes can even get to it. And because Iron First is a huge deal, I want to make sure you can get to it. So, I also don't know where and why he won't respond, but we'll try it again here. Yeah. They were going by the notes. The show notes are definitely there, so they know what to talk about. But I was going to go into the why do we really need another tank class. But we have 3 Lego tanks now and 3 plate tanks now, so that's a thing. It says that Ari is offline.
All right.
Oh,
Can you hear
there
me?
you are. Hello.
Oh,
All right.
All right.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
I can hear everybody.
Look, nothing happened. It's all right there. See, nothing happened. On with the show.
Anyway.
I was asking you about the armor cap and if
Oh,
there's
yeah.
going to be a problem with. I mean, bears are supposed to be able to just take damage, but being at armor cap is possibly bad, and you might be able to get.
Oh,
to
yeah.
really
No, it is.
quickly.
Like
So,
that's that's the reason the armor cap was increased from 75 to 85% in Mist to begin with, is because we were going to we could, if we wanted to, potentially armor cap at the end of Siege. So they bumped the armor cap up so that wouldn't happen. And now I think that's theoretically a thing that could happen when you have a stackable modifier, like a stackable armor modifier, on top of your just bear's natural armor.
right.
I mean, sure, the armor cap's like 46,000, but I mean, it's a thing that could actually happen. Like all you need is like 12,000 base armor, like 11,500 base armor or something, 3 stacks of iron fur, and you're at cap. However, that being said, it's really easy to tune iron fur around that. So just if nerf iron fur,
Yeah,
if
I
that's
don't
a
know.
problem.
But is in that regard though, is getting 3 stacks of iron fur in that small window really going to happen that often? But in it happening that often, is that okay that it happens here and there?
It could happen. It'd be really easy for it to happen on a swamp. You bank 100 rage, pop 2 stacks of iron fur back to back. You have about 8 seconds before they fall off. If you get a mangle proc on that artifact trait, I think it's gory fur. Next one only costs like 22 rage. You can get that in about 4 or 5 seconds. Yes, you can.
Wow.
You could do it theoretically. You couldn't do it very often. It would be like once every 25 seconds or so. But you could, pop up 3 stacks, on top of each other to handle some big hit that's incoming.
Okay.
I think that sounds fine, just because it's like you're giving up a lot to do that. Like
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
to
'cause
do
you're gonna
that,
take
you
a
don't
lot
have
of
mitigation later. So
Yeah.
I
Like
just
you're gonna end up taking a lot of damage after that 3-stack, like 3 or 4 second 3-stack window wears off. You're gonna be taking a lot of damage for quite a while because you need to build up the rage to get another one rolling.
Right. But that only matters really for Bear, and the one issue is that like no other tank can really do that. The one thing I can think of that becomes problematic in that sense is possibly high mastery levels on Protection Paladins, because Shield of the Righteous was changed to all incoming damage, not just physical. Or
Yep.
like stacking tons of mastery on a Prot Warrior, because they get block and then critical block, and they can block like entire swings. But that's not armor weirdness, because you're gonna have more HP than them as a Guardian, and
Yep.
more base armor as them, and more armor. It's weird. It scares me that there might be a lot of awkward, like double Bear Druid tier 21 because they take no damage. Waka waka waka. So
I mean, that's what people did that started this tier. But
yeah,
I don't know if it was double bear
True.
at the start of this tier, but pretty much everyone ran one Guardian the first few weeks before the multi-strike nerf.
yeah,
But like I said, it's an easy thing to nerf if it is in danger of becoming a problem. And we don't know what the item level increases are going to look like from tier to tier yet.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to even know if it's going to be a problem.
okay,
and it's like it really depends on boss design. Like if we end up having a lot of bosses that like every 21 seconds or so have a huge physical damage moment, and then are not so dangerous between then it's like bears are gonna totally rock that if we have like more than one boss that does that. And we've seen some kind of tiers that really favor a type of mitigation over another. So but we
Cough,
really
Blackrock
don't
Foundry.
yeah. We don't really know what it's going to look like yet, and if how important that strength is going to be compared to other tanks. And God, it really depends on when we like actually get raid testing in, and not just like testing the servers, raid testing.
Oh, don't even. Oh my gosh, the last raid testing was such. So.
I know.
Oh my goodness. I don't know why it does that. It's weird. I mean, I guess it's a software thing, not a hardware thing last time. But other question I had too was that we have 3 leather tanks and 3 plate tanks. I guess they balanced it out. That's why we didn't get another like plate tank. We got, or a mail tank. It was 3 leather now and 3 plate. So we're set there, I suppose.
Like at some point, it doesn't really matter because 4 pieces of gear come from tier tokens anyway, and that's like, who cares what leather or what armor type that is? It's you're not really competing with people of the same armor type, and so it just matters what thematically fits a Vengeance Demon Hunter. And it's like mail or leather. I would kind of like mail because mail's got some really cool transmogs I'd like to try out. But I guess leather, since the 2 others are leather, that's what they decided on. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, you're basically mostly like only wearing pants anyway on Demon Hunter.
They're not wearing much. They could probably wear cloth, and it would still thematically make sense.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's
Yeah.
just a loincloth, really.
That's all it is, yeah. And I guess the only like tanky question I has is, you guys were talking about when my mic wasn't working apparently in Skype, that like you can do mythic on any tank and you're good to go, right? Like you don't have to do a certain layout of tanks to do what you need to do. And that's understandable for no one outside of like the Mythic World first race where they do, even though Method's still Prot Warrior because Scott won't play anything else. But a lot of other guilds find ways to change tanks out or gear them earlier and then switch them out. Like I know like Brewmaster Monks were super strong on Mythic Iron Maidens, and if you didn't have one during Cutting Edge Progression, you did have a problem. You had a problem because just like the stupid blood debuff can be guarded. They can solo the boat with no healer, the blood boat rah rah guy. So do you?
Yeah, Sunnier knows all about that.
Do you?
I made her do that.
Is there going to be a possibility of like with 6 tanks now, like even more like pivotal moments during progression that you might need to have this tank to do this, or you're going to be at a loss, like a Brewmaster Monk on Herlock Garrosh, or throwing kegs and kiting around the whole room. Like, that's still gonna, I guess it'll exist, but...
I mean, it'll always exist for cutting edge progression because that's what cutting edge progression does. They find ways to make the system easier, and they do it. That's just what you kind of like. That's the point. I think once you break out of that progression race, then it starts getting into like the creative solutions of people who refuse to reroll or do extreme things like that. And it's pretty much all of, as long as all of Mythic is accomplishable by tanks, and it has been like for the past few expansions, I think that's the balance point we want to get at.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, as long as everyone can do every encounter, then can do as in with backup from a reasonably skilled raid team can actually accomplish every encounter, then that's fine. And I guess kind of to illustrate that, we did all of this entire expansion without a Holy Paladin, and we made out okay. So
that's
I
wild.
know.
You really did?
Yeah.
That is bonkers. I didn't know that. But
yeah, I mean it's possible. It made the tanking more like it put more weight on us to not die, as tanks, but we did it.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you can do whatever you want. I mean, we'll have to see how it works. I just don't know. I know when monks were introduced to Mists of Pandaria as the new class, they were either like amazing or just garbage truck. So it's going to be like that, of course, for Demon Hunters. But they're testing so much earlier now, and they've already done raid testing, and they already have dungeons are all out, and tons of heroic dungeons can be tested now too. So I hope they find things, because I know when Brewmasters early on in Warlords were having trouble because their armor was too low, and they over-buffed base armor for them, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, because then when Gar got strong enough, then they were like inkillable, so they had to nerf that. So it was this back and forth thing. It was the hot fixes for 4 weeks in a row, nerfing Paladins, nerfing Windwalker Monks, nerfing Brewmaster Monks, buffing these. And I hope that doesn't happen, but I guess...
Well, yeah, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Tank balance for probably the first 3 or 4 months of the expansion was absolutely terrible, for one reason or another. And since we're testing so much earlier, the hope is that won't happen again. But we'll have to wait and see. And to be fair, we're talking about balance of like a 10% delta or something. Like,
sure,
in the grand scheme of things, if you're like just looking at it with an objective eye, you're like, well, it's not actually that bad. But when you're the class that's on the lower end of that delta, you kind of feel bad. Or on the other, or like the higher end of that delta, you're like, man, this is great. What are you talking about? Like I one of the cases in point is when Bear Thrash got cut in half. A lot of people were complaining that like it wasn't strong, or still wasn't strong, like it wasn't strong enough anymore. When in reality, like, no, it was perfectly fine to accomplish what you needed to do. You're just not completely broken. So.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to put it.
And I think there's always like one of the issues, like back when in Mists of Pandaria, Brewmasters were either really weak or really strong, and part of that was the skill required to play one. Like just to break into entry-level Brewmastery took a lot of understanding of all their kind of interesting but weird mechanics. Whereas I'm hoping with Vengeance they learn from that and they have like this ultra simple floor you can start on, so that you can jump in and start and not have to understand stagger or get an add-on to track it, or know when to purify it, like all that kind of subtle stuff Brewmasters had, so that people can like play at a reasonable level and there's not that huge differential between like either they suck or all high-end guilds are running them. It's weird.
Yeah. I wonder, that's a huge thing they're tuning back on in Legion overall, again, because they're pulling things out, adding complexity in the talent calculator, a lot to understand, of course, and to work for understanding in your artifact weapon. So I do wonder if there's going to be a certain delta on, like, endgame for, like, the whole endgame meta of it. But I wonder if on the baseline, if people can ask you how to, like, well, how do you do this boss? You can be like, well, I, spec this and I do that. And it's a little more easier because it's been a little convoluted, and it gets a little bit more and more like deeper in the mud these last 2 expansions in a row, where like guides are 50 pages long, and walls of text by Trox are just terribly huge and complicated, and it's hard for people to like think about tanking when you have to like read, you know, a documentary.
I mean, or you could just play Guardian and only switch like one talent for three raid tiers.
That's fair.
I mean, unless you're like Scumbag and EPS, in which case you switch one more. But yeah.
Well,
I guess that's another point. Is hopefully talent choice becomes more of a thing, and that plays into the whole balance thing. Like, if baseline balance is at a point where everyone is like relatively equal within some acceptable margin, because nothing can be perfect, then you can have those choices which push everything up and down depending on who is playing the character.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears and talk about abilities and talents, and a little bit about artifacts if you want to bring up some of those as well. But let's go a walk through the Vengeance Demon Hunter talent list here for what you have found out again, and expound upon like what are really good and what are kind of like hot garbage. So, Sunnier, walk me through what have you found from the talents currently being built? There's one still exist, but you know, from what we know.
Like I already talked about the 2 big ones that feel that like serve to make things much more interesting if you're experienced with Vengeance, which is Fracture and Fellblade. And Fracture has some like decent competition because there's a very strong pain generation talent, pain tolerance, and then Abyssal Strike is more of a like being able to control groups. It's very useful in dungeons. So it has kind of like the trade-off there that so I think it's going to be the big winner for most raids, but it's not the strongest choice all of the time, which I think is a good place for some talents. And then we quickly like a couple tiers down go to Fellblade, where its competition is like 2 very relatively boring talents. One increases your sigil damage, which is useful, but it's not exciting, or it increases your sigil usage. So like when you want to control stuff in AoE, it's really useful, but it's just like, how can anything compete with this ability that keeps you in melee range and makes everything more interesting and generates pain and all of that stuff. And so I kind of feel like that one could use some work. But we already talked about those. So there's Fellblade also competes with a talent called Burning Alive, which makes your shield wall type ability, Fiery Brand, which reduces all damage incoming by 40%, but it's on a single target. It makes that spread between different targets. So it's like, that seems like a really useful thing in practice, but it spreads every 2 seconds, I think. Yeah. Which is like, for a talent that you only use every minute or a minute and a half when you need it, like it slowly spreads, and it's like it can be useful, but it's just too slow.
It only lasts for like 10 seconds too, right? So if it spreads, does it have a full 10-second duration, or like a 2-second window? Like, how does that even work?
I should look into that. But either way, it's just like, it feels like it should be a thing. Like, if you use your big shield wall type ability, you kind of want to not die immediately, and it turns that into like I want to not die in the next 10 seconds, but it doesn't have quite the punch that you really want it to be. So I feel like those, like, especially since that talent competes with Fellblade,
right?
It could use some love, like, and maybe it's just me being used to the current AoE situation where everything in raids dies so quickly.
That's very true.
That there's no way that like an AoE shield wall is going to be competitive against anything, really, because stuff will die before it's a value.
It's not. I mean, saying an AoE shield wall would be beneficial, but it doesn't work that way. It's like demoralizing shout that slowly jumps around to other things, but it has to jump first before it works.
And every 2 seconds is a really long time when you're about to die.
Right, sure.
That's a death window easily. You could use that button and really hope your talent kicks in, and then suddenly you fail to parry the next 3 hits and you're a goner anyway.
Yeah. What else we got?
So then the next few tiers we've got, as a general thing with the Vengeance talents that I really love is that each talent kind of does a different thing. You're comparing apples and oranges. Like, you've got the pain generator, you've got the AoE mob control talent, and then you've got the personal survival talent, and all sorts of variations of that. And because those are all such different things, you can say well, this fight requires A, B, C, and then another A, and you can kind of match that. In comparison to a lot of our talents are these are the 3 healing talents. You got to choose if you want the single target AoE or whatever. Right. And it kind of ends up being a math problem. And Vengeance has a couple of those when we get down to it. There's a couple of talents, Bathe in Flame and Blade Turning, that both increase your pain generation. And they do it like Bathe in Flame reduces the cooldown of Immolation Aura, which is one of your rotational pain generation abilities. And then Blade Turning gives you pain whenever you parry. So they both give you resources through different things, but the answer to which gives you more resources and which gives you more external benefits, if Immolation Aura can be up more, then you get more healing because it's fire damage, and there's an artifact trait that increases healing through fire damage, and you get more AoE control. And then, so it's kind of a weird balancing thing that I wish didn't really exist, because I don't want Simcraft to decide the talent I always run with ever because it's the best pain generation talent. I want to think about what I need in a different situation.
Right. It's a weird tier in this regard too, because there's a lot of double dipping, because obviously as you gain gear, you'll gain more parry, and as you parry more things with Blade Turning, you'll gain more pain, and it means you can what's it called, the actual heal, the Soul Cleave. But then Feast of Souls, which without the pain generating talent gives you your own personal hot. It more or less gives you a frenzied regen on every Soul Cleave. But then, if you don't have the pain to actually use either one of those, then you need one of them to work, because then Bathe in Flame also technically will heal you for the damage it deals because of an artifact perk, and it makes you have the cooldown up more often by default, and there's no cast or cost for Immolation Aura. It's just an instant, it's 12-second cooldown with the talent. So, one of these will be the best one, and it will be mathed out, and that's unfortunately how it works in some regard, but...
Yeah, that's kind of the weakest tier in my opinion, because everything else is just so wildly different that it's situational, and that's exactly how I want talents to be, is just you change them every single fight, and since they're now free and easy to change, that's what I'm looking for.
Sure. Absolutely. Hellgate looks kind of fun, but...
That ability is amazing, and it's so niche, because Demon Hunters have already have a lot of AoE mob control abilities. They have Immolation or just a passive fire damage pulsing out from them, and then they have Sigil of Flame, which they can place on the ground, and then after 2 seconds or less, it explodes and deals a bunch of fire damage. They can their big movement ability. I just forget the name of it.
I was looking for it right now too.
Infernal Strike.
Yeah.
Which is a heroic leap, but you turn into a demon and deal fire damage instead of Thunder Shock equivalent that the warrior one does, but you can use it more often.
And Soul Cleave even AoEs too. Your big usable ability that heals you cleaves. So
there's already a lot of AoE control, but Hellgate does it AoE taunts onto you when you teleport into your Sigil of Flame. So it's there's always kind of niche uses for being able to AoE taunt.
Sure.
You don't need it every fight, especially in raids, but it's kind of one of those things you might need it, and it's super cool when you do need it because it's just feels really powerful. And then
oh, go ahead.
Well, the competition is like you've got your super niche Hellgate, and then you've got concentrated sigils, which actually like removes one of the really great things about sigils, and that you can place them anywhere in a 30-yard range.
Right.
But it makes them easier to use rotationally. So, like if you've just got a single target boss fight, you can start using Sigil Flame. Rotationally, you don't even have to think about placing it at your feet. You just use it, and it gives you a little bonus damage and healing. And that's all you really need for that situation. So I feel like those two are kind of good. Like they cover different situations. That's what I want to see. And then Razor Spikes is like the not necessarily defense and damage trade-off, but it gives you more defense, and then at the opportunity cost of the other two, you get that that little damage boost, which can be pretty nice if you're planning for it. Like if you save up your pain and then spam soul cleaves and get some of that delicious 20% physical damage increase.
And then there are a couple in here that I was looking at that I wanted to make sure I bring up, which is Last Resort and Soul Rending. And I don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to switch over to your artifact as well, too, because I want to make sure I have enough time to go to Guardian. That's Guardian stuff. So we talked about earlier how you heal for your fire damage. That's a thing on your artifact called Charred Warblades, where you basically gain 15% leech on only your fire damage. But it is a vampiric heal on fire damage only. So how is that? Is that going to double dip with leech? Because if you're healing for your fire damage passively, but then if you have soul rending, which will A, give you 100% leech while metamorphosis, and then B, Last Resort, which is not going to happen all that often, but it could still happen.
Yeah, and I think
how much healing is that going to double dip?
I think it'll double dip, but it's kind of a special situation because it's all on your metamorphosis. Mm-hmm. So metamorphosis is on a 3-minute cooldown, and it's not the strongest cooldown ever. It's just last stand plus some extra resource generation.
Right. I didn't add Fueled by Pain into the mix. I'm sorry. It was 3 things. And then Fueled by Pain. That's whenever you consume a soul fragment, you have a chance to go into meta for 5 seconds.
And there's a lot of things like that. And I feel like they're really powerful for those 5 seconds, but the opportunity cost of giving those up, it's not a straight win. If you happen to be almost dying a bunch, and then depending on your 1 minute proc of Fueled by Pain, it can be really powerful. And that's kind of what I like about Demon Hunter talents have a bunch of things that build off each other, and you can be the Sigil build, or you can be the Metamorphosis build, or you can be the Soul Cleave build. And there's a bunch of different talents that kind of build on top of that. And they all, if they're all kind of valid, which I really hope that they're, at least situationally valid, I think that's very powerful and adds a lot of complexity to the spec. As far as just being able to adapt to a lot of different situations and then building on top of all that gameplay. Because for one thing, it feels kind of clever when you're I'm going to be the metamorphosis guy, and then I'm going to, when I do proc metamorphosis or when I do use it, I'm going to be so powerful when I do use it. And maybe a little weaker when I don't use it. But if that's what I need right now, that's excellent.
It's very thematic, and that's the one thing that rings true for Demon Hunters, for both Havoc and for Vengeance, is that everything is very fantasy, because they built this class up from the ground up for this expansion, so hopefully it all feels fantasy, because that's their new baby. But yeah. I wonder in practice if it won't boil down to some of these, which comes down to feedback right now, that a lot of these are kind of a little bit weird, and that they're if they're really niche, though, then you can swap them for different fights. That's the whole point of talents. You're not supposed to play like Arielle over there, who just take the same talents for an entire raid tier. That's bad. That's bad, okay?
I mean, not all of them. I'd take, No, I still take Displacer Beast for like 2.
Oh my goodness.
I used to wild charge for mana, then we changed our strat, and then I
Right.
don't need to do it anymore.
That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
No, well, yeah, but I'll switch over here and you walk me through the same kind of thing with Guardian here. Are there any like really bad, really great looking talents, or how like the artifact hook's gonna work together in chorus with everything? What you got for me, sir?
Like all the talents from a mechanical point of view seem fine. There's nothing that stands out as being like truly mechanically just bad, which is pretty cool. Makes me really happy. Like Brambles, sure, it's undertuned, but it's like the obvious AoE talent. Blood Frenzy is like a really good passive talent that is useful in pretty much almost any scenario. Short-lived AoE, it's pretty bad, but you just kind of live with, just take Brambles. Like it's not really a hard choice. Pulverize, like there is a current problem with Pulverize where the duration isn't sufficiently long enough to accommodate having to stack Thrash 3 times. They've said they're going to change that. I don't know what they're going to change it to, but it is supposedly going to be a change.
Okay.
And so, like, those are all your standard baseline mitigation talents. And you got your movement talents. This is something Druids or these Guardians, I haven't really looked too closely at many other specs, but as opposed to Demon Hunters, which have like different sprinklings of different kind of abilities in their talent tree, these are all very much themed. So you got your movement themed talents, which are all fine. There was some concern that you'd pretty much have to take Guttural Roars all the time, but if there's anything we've learned from this expansion, it's that you don't really have to have stampeding. Like if you need multiple stampeding roars, it's not going to happen all the time. Might happen a couple times,
right?
Which is sure you take Guttural Roars, but additionally, those fights are not going to be the same ones where you need your own personal movement. So fights in HFC where you would take Displacer Beast, you wouldn't take Guttural Roars because the raid doesn't need to move really fast. So they're never in conflict, and it works out reasonably well. Affinities are actually all really neat. We haven't really seen much of a way to use them yet, primarily because you just can't use them in 5-man content, really.
Right.
And they're only. You can use them in group PvP, and I know there has been a lot of PvP testing going on. I haven't had the ability to do any of it myself. I want to, because Guardian PvP actually sounds amazing. But affinities actually all sound pretty neat. The passive effect and all of them, each one has its use. Like you have your baseline movement speed, you have a little bit of passive healing, and you have extra range. Extra range actually is more useful than you might think it would be when you're like trying to kite something.
It looks ridiculous though.
I mean, yeah, sure, it looks weird.
Okay.
No, I agree. It looks strange, but there are actually potential uses for it. And then you have a fight like Nefarian, right? In BRD, where there's a whole phase where only range can do stuff. Well, it's perfect time for balance affinity.
Yep.
So all of them have their uses. I'm sure we'll see how each affinity is best suited to each encounter as more of them are available.
Sure.
Got your CC talents. I'm really sad the Mass Entanglement's still there. It's like just terrible. Like, I don't have another word. It's a garbage talent. When we used it for Soccer achievement and some other achievement. We used it for like 2 achievements this expansion. We only ever use the talent for achievements. I think some people actually used it for Maiden's Progression to route the ads on one of the boats. I forget which one. So, like, theoretically, you could use it there, but overall, the CC tier is basically just a choice between Bash and Typhoon. And Bash has the additional problem of being basically a worse Hand of Justice. So, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. True.
Ideally, they would at least be comparable, but they're not right now. So, who knows? And then you got this nice set of rage generation talents. You got your passive overtime one, you got your burst, and you got your manageable proc. All of them are pretty nice. Galactic Guardian comes with the added benefit of just some passive damage reduction. So, like mechanically, these are all great. Earth Warden. See, I was actually originally pretty down about Earth Warden until I realized fights like Chromog exist. Wait, which one is it? Which one is the one in BlackRock? Was it Chromog or it was Chromog, right?
Yeah. The big red guy.
Yeah. So fights like Chromog exist where they have a 2-second swing timer and it's often a stop a lot to do things, right? So that means you're going to recharge your Earth Warden charges a lot, and you're going to get more use out of each Earth Warden charge because the swing timer is slower. So Earth Warden does actually have a place. It's a very niche place, but it does have a place. It could probably stand to be better than it is right now. Maybe a shorter recharge time. I don't know. GOE's fine. Passive buff tiered. AM abilities. Spiral of Fittest, again, fine. It's like, here, have more cooldowns. All right, sure. Rend and Tear, again, is just like your a passive damage reduction. There is the problem where you cannot use Rend and Tear and Pulverize. They just don't work. Is that okay? I guess. Probably because you'd more likely be coupling Blood Frenzy with Rend and Tear because they both function off of Thrash stacks. So, I mean, that's probably fine. I mean, if you're going to take Pulverize, you're probably going to take, well, I guess Lunar Beam is like hilariously undertuned, but
it looks cool.
It looks cool. I like it. I like it, like thematically. It's just hilariously undertuned. Like the AOE damage is not sufficient to justify the cooldown, and neither is the healing. But I mean, you can change those numbers. It's not really that big of a deal.
But already the bristling fur changed. Tell me about this.
Yeah. So bristling fur. Everyone knows I've historically been not a big fan of this talent. I didn't use it at all in HFC. Actually, that's a lie. No, I used it when I was tanking Fell when Sunny was on vacation for 2 weeks.
Oh gosh.
On Zul'Horak. That's the only time I've actually ever used it.
That's how desperate he was when I was on vacation, is he had to use bristling fur.
Now it's obviously changed in Legion though, but
yeah, I mean, it's basically just the worst form of Enrage. Like if you remember Enrage from Mists of Pandaria, it was you used a button, you got some rage. This is basically just a worse form of that. You use a button, you get some rage, but you only get rage when you're taking damage. It should just be Enrage. Like just make it Enrage. Like I don't know what to tell you.
It's only gonna really work on like AOE tanking, right? Like you could bristling fur brambles, and I guess that's a thing, but if you're not taking but like 1 or 2 or 3 boss swings in 8 seconds, how much is it gonna give you?
I'm assuming it uses a similar regeneration formula to Warriors. Okay. That's my assumption. And if it does, then I'm also assuming it would be based on the amount of damage you're taking somehow. So that like similar to past expansions, higher amounts of damage give you more rage. Okay. But still, it has that problem where you have to actually take the damage before you can actually do anything with the rage, as opposed to getting the rage up front and therefore reducing the damage. Just getting the rage up front would be a better way of doing that talent.
Okay.
And just rename it Enrage. Like rename it Enrage. Change it to give you some amount of rage.
Any...
Make it same cooldown, 40-second cooldown, give you 45 rage. That's fine.
Any looking at the artifact real quick too before we move on, there's a lot of like you get Rage of the Sleeper, which is a super cooldown, and then you get Embrace of the Nightmare later on, which makes Rage of the Sleeper even stronger. And you're one of the only artifacts in the game that actually has 2 passives, where you gain both Blood Claw and the active ability. So it's like a lot of extra stuff being tacked on here to gain a whole bunch of like extra bonus damage reductions for the bear because you only have like HP and armor, so it's just gonna any really big adaptive fur is just passive magic mitigation. It's just all
Yeah,
these
I mean,
things. There's tons of mitigation.
adaptive fur is pretty cool. In that it's only really good against pulsing damage, or damage that occurs more than like once every 5 or 10 seconds. So outside of those situations, adaptive fur is like basically useless. But for those situations, it's really good. And lots of fights tend to have raid-wide AOE's that go out on a periodic basis. So adaptive fur would be really strong for that. That's cool. So Rage of the Sleeper is like a pretty ridiculous button in and of itself. I can't see the damage reflection actually functioning on a raid boss. Like that sounds kind of broken. Oh, really? It lowers physical damage? Adaptive Fur lowers physical damage? That sounds like a bug. There's no way that's supposed to be intended.
It's just, physical damage is an element, apparently. Yeah. That would be crazy.
It's apparently how it works right now in Alpha. Thanks for confirming that, Dre. But yeah, Rage of the Sleeper, it's it's like a get more resources, and it's like a cooldown. It's an additional cooldown, basically. What's the duration? I've never actually used the button because I've never been in a situation where I cared to use it.
I don't know. That's a good question. It doesn't actually show the duration, so I can't tell you.
Drake can probably tell me. But when it gets to Embrace of the Nightmare addition to it, it becomes a really super strong button. And it kind of it feels like it runs counter to the whole idea of like reducing tank cooldowns. It's like, okay, we're going to reduce your standard like shield wall stuff, but then we're going to give you this ridiculously overpowered button on your artifact weapon on a short cooldown. It's like, it's kind of odd.
Apparently 20 seconds or 15. That's both long durations. Wow.
Yeah, like that's a hilariously strong button, which I mean tells me that none of this has gone through tuning, right?
Well, sure.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see either that the amounts drop drastically, or the duration go down or something. Gory Fur is actually probably the ones that I'm worried about the most, in terms of being just hilariously ridiculous. Because even at 1.5 RPPM, we're talking like about it's like basically an extra rage per second from that one button. It is cool in the sense that you have to choose how you use it, which is pretty neat. I like that, but it has the potential to cause issues with Iron Fur, like I mentioned before, where you end up like being able to drop 3 stacks almost back to back.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that actually A becomes a problem, or B is a tuning thing, or something they tune around. There's a couple in here there's actually one in here I really don't like. That's Bloody Paws. I hate that. I hate that trait.
What does it do? Where is it? Let me see.
It's the one up and to the right of Rage of the Sleeper. So
you have some of the unpleasantest artifact trait names I've heard, especially compared to the Brewmaster ones, which are like face palm and all sorts of beer puns. I'm sorry.
Hey man, I like them. They're all pretty like.
Bloody Paws is just like sad.
I don't know. It's we're gonna be aggressive. We're aggressive bears.
I know.
Right
It's like no one wants bloody
good.
Paws.
Anyway,
that is pretty good.
So it's just a passive snare on your thrash. Why is that bad?
Because a lot of the time you don't want your AoE to slow things down. So 5-man's a really good example of this. Like you want to pull more than one group at once, but the first group that you thrashed, well, suddenly they're moving at half speed and take forever to catch up to you, so AoEing them down is a huge pain.
Okay.
And one of the examples that I really like to use, even though it's hilariously old, is Nefarian again. When you were tanking skeletons in Phase 3 Nefarian, you actively did not want to snare them. Because if you did, and they got into one of the purple pools, you were basically dead.
Right.
So not having an ability to, or not having the ability to turn off snares has the potential to be a problem. However, being able to AoE kite, say with Bloody Paws and the Balance Affinity, that'd be pretty sick. But should ideally have some way to turn it off, other than respecking your artifact weapon and just not taking the trait.
It's in a weird spot where, like, you don't have to take it though to get somewhere. That's kind of in a weird place, but
it's like probably the very last one you pick.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Because it's not in a direct tier path, and it's like above the main base when you can go all the way around it and not go to it. I wonder.
I mean, you'll want Bestial Fortitude. I suspect Jagged Claws is probably going to be one of the last ones you take.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas Bestial Fortitude is like on the side with a lot of really powerful buttons, so you want to go there first.
Fair enough. Well, alrighty. I'm going to plug some things, and then I'll ask you to plug some things, then we'll take some questions from a chat room. So real quick, of course, I want to give a big shout out to one of our supporters here and affiliates on the show. If you don't know about this service, then I don't know if you're living on the internet, because it's like everywhere, but there's a whole lot more of it that you might not know about. So first and foremost, if you want to help support the show, you can do so by clicking the link down below that looks like this. It's Loot Crate. They do a monthly Mystery Geek and Gamer gear, where they have multiple different types of crates now. Or the default is the Loot Crate, which is monthly stuff. I actually have like 6 or 7 of these that I have to open that I haven't done yet. I'm saving them up for like a big opening boxing stream thing. But they have Level Up, which is usually all apparel. They have Loot Pets. They have official Fireflies now in the cargo crates, as well as Loot Anime, which I think someone in chat maybe subscribed to this one and has good things to say about it. But if you want to grab yourself any loot crates, you can use the button down below, or when you're checking out, use the code FIRELORD, just FIRELORD, which is the mascot for the show, and save yourself 10% off your whole thing. I've been subscribing to Loot Crate for freaking forever. Like, honestly, I have like 20 boxes in the corner that Latomi has been like, hey, throw those away. Well, not really, but, you know, I have a whole bunch. But it costs roughly about $15 a month USD, depending on where you are, and you can see all the different countries that they deliver them to are all updated here now in the Ship To catalog up in the top corner, so you can see if you want to help support the show that way and grab yourself a loot crate or an anime crate or a cargo crate or whatever you want to get, or a level up, all right there. I like it. Maybe if you want to, you can do that. Of course, if you have missed anything on FinalBossTV, go check out our YouTube page. All the different side content, all the first pass videos, artifact coverage, and past shows are all right there on the YouTube page. You can also check out the channel guide, !guide, in our Twitch chat, or the button below the stream to see all the different categorized stuff I've done in Legion and what is still on the horizon. So that's that. That's my plugs. Friends, I need to know, where can people go to find more about bear stuff? Arielle, go.
So there's a blog called The Inconspicuous Bear. It's theinkbear.com. I haven't written much basically past the start of Hellfire, once I completed the heroic video guides, because there wasn't really much to talk about. Sure, you can talk about scumbag and DPS, but I mean, that only goes so far. Probably going to be a lot more as Legion gets more iteration, and I have more time. Haven't had as much time recently because doing lots of guild stuff. But that's where Bear is, and we also have a Discord. There's a Druid Discord. It's called Dream Grove. I put a link somewhere. I don't know where I put it.
It's right here. I'll be sure to put them. I'll put them in the video description box as well. There's almost Discords for every single class, so I'll definitely have those in the video description box on YouTube. So the other question then is there a place to go for Demon Hunter stuff?
Well, obviously my blog, sunnier'sartofwar.com. Then there's the Demon Hunter Discord, which is called Mardoom. I'm so glad Blizzard has given us names for every single Discord now.
Yeah.
They just made it easy. think, I mean, and there's lots of other places. Soon my blog will have an actual guide for Vengeance up. So that is something to look forward to. But there's also Tankcast, which is Arielle's and my podcast, which you do every few weeks, which talks exclusively about tanks and all tanks, and we pretty much tunnel vision on just that run roll. So if that's all you're interested in, that's a good place to go.
Absolutely. There's also a guide that was built by Word Up. I think he made one for Havoc, but I don't know where that is. If I find it, I'll put that in the video description box as well. But he's put together a gigantic guide for the other spec of the Demon Hunter, so you can find information on Vengeance on Sunnier's website, and then I'll try to get Word Up's guide for you as well. Also pop the so the top link right there. This one. This is for Druid, and this one is for Demon Hunter. So for the Discord servers, but
I do want to caveat the podcast and say we know lots about Brewmasters and Guardians and Demon Hunters. A little bit about I know a little bit about Paladins, but not a whole lot. And Sunnier knows a little bit about Warriors, and I know almost next to nothing about DKs. Okay. So
very leather focused. We love our leather tanks.
Oh, okay.
And then we're passable at our plate tanks.
Yeah,
those are our all-rate tanks.
But we bring on guests to cover the tanks that we don't know when we're doing in-depth discussions about them. So
yeah, I can't always talk about tanking only.
Just wanted to make sure no one's expecting us to be super duper experts in all tank classes, because we're not.
No, that's fair. That's okay. I mean, I can't talk about tanks every week, so it's good to be some place that you can talk about them.
I can't hear me again.
Oh no! Did this really happened, didn't it? Really?
Yes, damn.
Oh my gosh! I can't imagine. We're taking questions from chat now.
Well, we should probably restart the Skype conversation before this keeps going further.
Well, maybe. Well, chat, give us some questions while I click this button real quick here. So we're taking chat questions. So if you have any questions for Vengeance or Guardian, please feel free to drop them in to the chat box. I don't know what's going on with my microphone today. I feel bad, but I have no idea. I mean, I feel like it's a Skype / thing. I don't know. This is the first time I've ever had this much of an issue. And it's funny, I actually brought this up at the beginning of the show when I was setting the show up, is that Skype for the longest time never gave me 16:9 cameras. But then today, apparently, I get 16:9 cameras in Skype, and now my microphone hates myself. So, yeah. Are you back to hear me? Good?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Okay, my goodness. I don't know what's going on. This is weird. I get 16:9 cameras in Skype, and then my microphone explodes. So that's fun. But
Rip Skype.
I know, right? We'll have to see. But we have, honestly, only about 6-7 minutes to take questions, because we have so much to talk about the show today. So, just get rid of me, don't need me. That's fair. That's fair. I'll allow it. Which, it happens. What we got here? Oh, do you think Mighty Bash should affect multiple targets instead of one?
It should do something. It'd be kind of cool if it was a cleave stun, where hit your target and then maybe one or two adjacent targets. That'd be pretty cool. And different, and not something that we see. And it also fits the bear kind of motif, where you wave your paw around and smack a few people and then they all get stunned.
And have you seen the new bear models? The new bear models are huge. I can imagine them.
They're amazing.
Just no problem swiping across and stunning everybody.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Absolutely. Blame Valk or not to blame Valk?
Oh yeah, well no,
Always.
we blame Churd. Also, but except the times that Valk screws up and fails to mark things correctly or gets himself killed, which has happened more than once.
I don't care who to blame as long as it's not me.
Almost never you.
Kenshi is curious about the possible stat priority for Vengeance tanks.
Oh God, I have no clue. So much has been changing recently that it's I haven't even thought about it. And I know it's coming because that's all I get asked about Brewmasters. That's the future for me.
It's weird too because bonus armor is gone. So and multi-strike is gone. So in some ways versatility by default is kind of an attractive tank stat because it's just the only thing you can get that now it's flat damage mitigation. Because most masteries for classes have like chances to add more, right? Like they're not just like you take less damage here.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter how you increase your effective health as long as you increase it.
Sure.
Guardians obviously have Guardian Mastery is just basically like if you math it right down, it's basically just a less expensive version of versatility, but it's also a more thematic way of doing it.
Right.
So it's basically by default better than versatility. There's also a problem where Guardians have no benefit from crits right now in alpha, so
just damage, yeah.
Rip, I guess.
Yeah.
And haste is also still is a lot stronger than it is on live.
Brewmasters are in the same spot as far as like not really scaling from crit, but we don't exist yet, so.
Oh, and how are tanks feeling in dungeons right now? Because when Warlords came out, tanks felt super squishy. Well, I guess that goes back to earlier talk about how secondary stats now are going to scale like faster and then slowly scale throughout the course of the expansion. Like you'll have a lot of your secondary stats at 110. And then over the course of the expansion, you won't gain 50% mastery. You'll gain like 20.
Yeah, so the idea is the coefficient doesn't get nerfed so heavily as you increase in level from 100 to 110. And normal dungeons are fine. Like I can't tell if it's just Guardians are overtuned or if dungeons are like just easy. But I mean, Sunnier, we did a heroic Calls of Valor, I think it was, and that seemed okay when DPS didn't suck at their job.
Yeah, I mean, like Vengeance has been really up and down. Like they first started out being like totally incompetent tanks. Like I remember dying constantly, and then the Ret Paladin would tank, and he would do just a million times better than me because they had overpowered self-healing. And now it's much better so that Vengeance can at least hold its own. But there's still so much like either broken mechanics or tuning that needs to happen that it's really hard to make a call on like how tanks will feel in heroics. I think there'll be like there was going to be a little bit of a learning curve, just like there was in Warlords, because there's a sort of an overall change of the view. Like tanks are going to have to be dependent on healers again, just like we were in Warlords. But that was a huge shakeup for tanks that they didn't really know. Like they thought they should be panicking all the time when they're really fine, or they couldn't really figure out how to adapt to that paradigm. So I think there's going to be some growing pains, as there always is when tanking mechanics change a little bit. But so far, 5-mans have been pretty easy to adapt to. Like as long as you know the mechanics in a general sort of way, you'll live. And if you don't, then you'll live the next time. So hopefully that stays the same.
And I think it also depends on the quality of your healer. Healers that have no idea what they're doing are very, very obvious.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
like me. Ha.
and can lead you to think that you're bad. But then when you're testing content with a real actual healer, like when we had Downey as our pocket healer a couple days ago, it's a world of difference. So when you're trying to make those calls, eliminate as many of the variables as you can, and one of those variables is going to be a healer. So make sure if you're a tank and you're testing alpha content, bring a healer that you know is good.
I mean,
and going
go ahead.
through stuff like the first time is always going to be rough because no one knows what the hell they're doing. So it's like a week, it's going to be the classic thing where a weekend people are going to freak out because it's like I'm wiping to trash and I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and it's just so confusing, and I feel like I'm doing okay, and then 2 weeks down the road they'll be like, this is easy, because everyone knows roughly how to do stuff. And so like the alpha is still, it's just in a constant state of no one knows what in the world they're doing because everything is changing so fast. Whereas once everything goes live, it'll just be like a brief 1 or 2 week period where no one understands anything.
No, absolutely true. I mean, there was a question earlier, like, what's the scariest healer you've run with so far in testing? And I don't know if any of you have run with a discipline.
Unskilled healers.
Well, I was gonna say, like, what's spec? I was gonna bring up discipline, throw them under the bus a little bit, because discipline is like, you have to be not only a DPS but also a healer at the same time. So I do wonder how potent they're going to be in the whole scheme of things for like solo tank healing a dungeon. Because that sounds a little...
I'm really worried about that, yeah.
Yeah. Because they have to, like, be so offensive to keep you alive. It's very different comparatively to how it's been, where it's just like bubble, 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 mending, penance, repeat. So...
Yep.
Yeah.
I doubt less, like, Disc Priest's ability to do so. I doubt... Like, I'm more nervous about people jumping in and then... Since it's such a huge change for all Disc Priests that, like, they'll assume that they know what they're doing and they'll jump in. They're like, wow, I have no clue, actually, and you're just going to die repeatedly because I have this learning curve to go through. And because Disc Priests are so prevalent, like, nowadays, I think a lot of people are going to be, like, jumping right in, assuming that it's the same, and it's not.
Yeah. We'll have to see. One more question, I guess, just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, was that you're not actually switching from Brewmaster to Vengeance, but you are trying to learn it a lot because you might be playing it in tandem, I guess? You like your leather tanks.
Yeah,
so.
I'm trying to do both, and because I love Brewmaster dearly, but it's like Vengeance is also a really cool thing that I'm really interested in. So, like, worst case, I'm still going to be doing both. Just one will be like my progression tank and one will be my alt raid tank.
Yeah.
Best case, I would do progression on both. But either way, I'm still going to be covering Brewmaster stuff.
Sounds fair to me. Are you still staying the bear druid?
Oh,
All
dude, of course. Like, I get everything I ever wanted, and then I change classes? No.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Come
That's
on.
fair. Well, I'm making sure you like that. You know, I read your post about how the blue bear is actually not like frozen bear, but it's like a ghost bear. You were sad about that, but everything else looks awesome.
I was sad, but I mean, it looks... I'm still probably going to go for it.
Wood bear and stone bear and fire bear. Yeah.
Dude, customizable
Love
forms.
the bears.
Yep.
Yeah, they're
Well,
awesome. I'm excited.
As a blanket for mostly every druid, except Boomkins, they got an HD model, but they're still not getting like a new model. But it's been like a thing ever since the show existed about like druids asking for new forms. So the new cats and the new bear forms are finally here. So there you go. It only took 4 years. So
I mean, when we got the original update, they were pretty good. It's just when you going through the new set of racial updates is when it really became clear that, man, those forms are showing some age.
Woo, yeah. But I think that's going to do it for us. We're just about at time here. So I'm going to hit this button right here. Wait, where is it? It's right there. There it is. Thank you so much for being here and watching episode number 112 of FinalBossTV, your wild game rating show. Sorry for technical difficulties today. It sometimes happens, I suppose. Skype upgrades stuff, and then Legion is out doing things, and then my whole show just... Around the table real quick again to our guests today, on for his 4th time, and he'll probably come back on the main Legion junket. Sir, thank you for being here, man. As a plan. It's all planned. But it's always a pleasure to have you on. You can go follow him at Arielle EJ on Twitter, of course, or at the Ink Bear. And then you can find him in the Discords. Yeah?
I think it happened again.
No, it did not! Did it not? No! Wow!
No,
Oh, it's back now.
It's back?
It's back. Okay.
I was plugging your Twitter. I plugged your Twitter. It's right there.
Oh, awesome.
There it is. Thank you for on the show again, sir. That's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. 10, man.
Skype, please. And there's Sunnier. You can go follow her on Twitter as well at Sunnier Brew, as well as Sunnier's Art of War as her blog. Everything's going to be in the video description box below, but everything you could have said could be totally wrong in a month. But how's that feel? Did it leave again? No! I plugged her. Now you don't hear me? This is so weird.
I heard half of it, and then it like slowly gets quieter and quieter.
This is the weirdest.
I just assume everyone else can hear, so I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Content.
Is it back now, baby? No.
Yeah.
Skype,
I can hear you now.
Please, Skype, please. Okay. I
Okay,
plugged
went
your
back-
Twitter and your
went
website.
away again.
Yes.
Now I think it's just trolling us, but
I'm not! This is so weird! Oh my god. This is the worst. Skype, please, please. I'm watching the volume bar change right now. This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. Can you please not? That'll do it for us for here, though. Thank you all so much for watching and dealing with this weirdness right now. But I will see you all next week. We're going to do episode number 6. Will be something. I'll put it together. We'll see what's going on. Right now, it's kind of hard to always make these Let's Talk Legion shows due to the fact that I have to find guests for everything. So stay tuned on Facebook and Twitter for that. Trust in your seal of, damn it, Ketsu, your seal of inevitable gold. And I will talk to you all later. And bye, everybody. Bye. Bye. Wave bye. What? I can't hear them. Wave. Do something. There we go. They're doing it. Damn it.